In southeast Missouri, about 20 miles from the Arkansas border, you'll find a small town called Poplar Bluff. The newspaper industry in Poplar Bluff has a rich history. Much of it began with John H. Wolpers. In 1911, Wolpers began his career in the newspaper industry in Bonne Terre, Missouri. In 1916, he was contacted by a group from Poplar Bluff to come down and take over the Republican paper there. So for $500, Wolpers moved his family down south to Poplar Bluff and purchased the weekly publication, the Poplar Bluff Republican.
And as he always said, all he bought was the name and a shirt tail full of type and a small subscription list.
Wolpers worked hard to build up the newspaper. At the time, Poplar Bluff had two newspapers, one Republican and one Democratic. In 1928, 12 years after Wolpers moved on the scene, he bought out the Democratic paper, the Interstate American, and combined the two papers to create the Daily American Republic. He announced that the paper was going to be independent in politics. While at the Daily American Republic, Wolpers endured through hard times. In the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan tried to take over Poplar Bluff. Wolpers continuously editorialized against the Klan in his articles. He received many threats, and the newspaper lost all but one advertiser. Eventually, the public opinion shifted against the Klan, and the paper was able to build itself back up. This is in large part due to Wolpers' relentless writing. Wolpers died in 1951, but he left a legacy behind him. By the 1950s, the Daily American Republic, or the DAR, was recognized as one of the leading small-town dailies in Missouri.
Later in the 50s and 60s is when it really did well.
John Stannard was the grandson of John Wolpers. He was a reporter at the DAR for 10 years and the editor for 15. He was editor when his family sold the paper to the Woodward family of Dubuque, Iowa.
We didn't sell to a chain, we sold to this family group, but 2 years later they sold the property to the current ownership, to Gary Rust, and I left the paper at that point along with about a fourth of the senior staff.
The paper is currently still owned by Rust Communications. The paper has undergone many changes in the turn of the century. Recently, the paper let go of one of two staff photographers, increasing the workload for Paul Davis, the current sole staff photographer.
This haven't had a whole lot of weekends off. I've had the last couple, but that concerns me a little bit.
The paper also recently cut back to 5 days rather than 6. Small-town newspapers have been affected by the changing newspaper industry differently than large circulation papers. Like many small newspapers, the DAR does not have a huge online presence. For now, though, the DAR is still staying afloat. By covering more local news that people can't find anywhere else, the paper has been able to maintain a steady audience. With the community support in Poplar Bluff, hopefully the paper will thrive for years to come.